The Great Chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest structure ever built by any species in the known universe. It floated in the void between three ancient star systems, a monument to the power of the 47 species that had united to rule the galaxy. The walls were made of crystal that had been grown over thousands of years, and the ceiling displayed the real-time positions of every star in the cosmos. Representatives from across the galaxy gathered here to decide the fate of worlds. Today, they had gathered to decide the fate of humanity. High Arbiter Zelthan rose from his throne at the center of the chamber. He was an impressive figure, standing nearly 3 meters tall, his body covered in scales that shifted color with his emotions. 6 eyes arranged in a circle around his head allowed him to see in all directions at once, and his 4 arms ended in hands capable of crushing stone. His species, the Veltari, had ruled the council for 800 years, and Zelthan had held the position of High Arbiter for the last century. "The matter before us today concerns the species known as humans," Zelthan announced, his voice carrying through the translation matrices that allowed all species to understand each other. "They have expanded beyond their permitted boundaries. They have established colonies in the Orion Corridor without council approval. They have ignored our warnings and our demands." A murmur passed through the assembled representatives. The humans were a young species barely 200 years into their spacefaring existence. They had been discovered by council scouts and immediately classified as a minor civilization, too primitive to pose any threat. They had been given a small region of space and told to stay within it. They had not stayed within it. "We have been patient," Zelthan continued. "We have sent diplomatic missions. We have explained the laws that govern this galaxy. And yet, they continue to expand. They continue to ignore our authority. They have even had the audacity to demand a seat on this council." Laughter echoed through the chamber. A seat on the council? For a species that had only just learned to travel between stars? The idea was absurd. "Therefore," Zelthan said, raising all 4 of his arms in a gesture of proclamation, "the council has voted. War has been declared upon the human species. The combined fleet of the council will bring them to heel. They will learn their place in the galactic order." The chamber erupted in cheers. Finally, the annoying humans would be dealt with. On Earth. In the city of Geneva, Admiral Catherine Cole sat in the command center of the United Terran Defense Force. She was 63 years old. With silver hair cut short and eyes that had seen too many battles, she had spent her entire adult life in the military, rising through the ranks through a combination of tactical genius and an absolute refusal to accept defeat. The message from the council had arrived 3 hours ago. War had been declared. A fleet of 400,000 ships was already on its way. The council expected humanity to surrender within a week. "Admiral," said Commander Daniel Perry, a young officer who served as her primary aide, "the council fleet has departed Nexus Prime. They will reach our outer colonies in approximately 6 days." Catherine nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the holographic display that showed the approaching armada. 400,000 ships. It was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. The council was not taking any chances. "What do we have?" she asked. Daniel checked his datapad. "Our official fleet consists of 240 combat vessels. The council believes this represents our total military capability." A small smile crossed Catherine's face. "In our actual strength? 3,000 combat vessels in various stages of readiness, 12 orbital defense platforms around Earth, 27 hidden weapon stations throughout the system. And the special projects, of course. Of course." Catherine stood and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting over Geneva, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. It was beautiful. This world had been humanity's home for hundreds of thousands of years. It had seen ice ages and warm periods, the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth of science and art and music. It had survived everything that nature and humanity itself had thrown at it. It would survive this too. "Open a channel to their flagship," she ordered. The communication was established within minutes. The face of High Arbiter Zelthan appeared on the main screen, his scales shifting through colors that indicated satisfaction and superiority. Admiral Cole, he said, I expected your call. I trust you are ready to discuss the terms of your species' surrender. The Council is prepared to be merciful, provided you submit immediately and without resistance. Catherine studied him for a long moment. She had read everything that Terran intelligence had gathered about the Veltari and about Zelthon specifically. He was considered brilliant by his species standards, a master of political manipulation who had outmaneuvered countless rivals to claim his position. He had overseen the conquest of 17 worlds during his time as High Arbiter. He had never faced humans before. High Arbiter, Catherine said, her voice calm and measured, I have received your declaration of war. I have reviewed the composition of your fleet. I understand that you expect this conflict to be brief and one-sided. Zelthan's scales shifted to a color indicating amusement. Your understanding is correct, Admiral. Your species is young and weak. You possess neither the numbers nor the technology to resist us. Surrender now, and your people will be allowed to live as a client species of the Council. Resist, and you will be destroyed. Catherine nodded as if considering his words. Then she leaned forward slightly, and her eyes locked onto his through the screen. I have one question for the Council, she said. Speak. Is that all you've got? Zelthan's scales flickered through several colors in rapid succession. Emotions his species had no names for because they had never experienced them before. Confusion, disbelief, and somewhere, deep beneath his confidence, the first cold touch of fear. I beg your pardon? He managed. 400,000 ships, Catherine said. Is that really the best you can do? I was expecting more of a challenge. The channel went dead. Catherine had terminated the connection. In the command center of the Council flagship, Zelthan stared at the blank screen for a long time. Around him, his officers exchanged nervous glances. No species had ever responded to a Council declaration of war with mockery. No species had ever dared. High Arbiter, his second-in-command, ventured carefully. What do you think she meant? Zelthon did not answer. His scales had settled into a color that his species associated with deep unease. He had studied the humans. He knew their history, their capabilities, their technology. Everything indicated that they were a minor species, easily conquered, and yet something in that woman's eyes had disturbed him. Something in her smile when she asked her question. She had not looked like a commander facing certain defeat. She had looked like a predator watching prey walk into a trap. Continue the advance, he ordered finally. We will show them the power of the Council. But as his fleet moved deeper into human space, Zelthan could not shake the feeling that something was very, very wrong. The Council fleet moved through human space like a storm sweeping across an ocean. 400,000 ships, representing the combined military might of 47 species, advanced in perfect formation. Their sensors scanned every asteroid, every moon, every planet. They expected resistance at every turn. They found nothing. Fleet Commander Vorath stood on the bridge of his flagship, a massive vessel called the Eternal Dominion. He was a Kathrani, a species known for their military prowess. His body was covered in thick armor plates that had evolved over millions of years of warfare on his home world. His 4 eyes could track multiple targets simultaneously, and his tactical mind had been honed by decades of conquest. Report, he demanded, his sensor officer. A thin creature with translucent skin through which his organs were visible, consulted his instruments. The human colony on Kepler 4 for to be has gone dark, Commander. No military vessels. No orbital defenses. Just civilians? And the previous 3 colonies? The same, Commander. All military assets have been withdrawn. The populations remain, but they offer no resistance. Vorath's armor plates clicked together in a sound his species made when puzzled. This was not how conquered species behaved. When the Council fleet arrived, enemy forces typically fought desperately to defend their homes. Even when defeat was certain, they resisted. It was the nature of intelligent beings to fight for survival. But the humans simply watched. They did not fight. They did not flee. They just watched with calm expressions and waited for the Council forces to land. Perhaps they have accepted the inevitable, suggested his second-in-command, a young Kathrani named Drexel. They know they cannot win, so they choose not to waste lives in pointless resistance. Perhaps Voreth said, but he did not believe it. He had studied the humans extensively before this campaign. Their history was a continuous record of warfare, much like his own species. Humans did not surrender easily. They did not accept defeat quietly. Something else was happening here. On Earth, Admiral Catherine Cole stood in the war room with her most trusted commanders. General Marcus Webb led the ground forces, a massive man whose ancestors had fought in every major conflict in human history. Director Lisa Morgan ran naval intelligence, a woman whose network of spies and analysts had penetrated every corner of the galaxy. Captain Samuel Green commanded the carrier Defiance, humanity's most advanced warship. Council fleet has taken 16 of our outer colonies, Lisa reported, manipulating the holographic display. They encountered no resistance, exactly as planned. Casualties? Catherine asked. A few civilians who got too close to landing zones. The Council forces are being relatively careful. They want slaves, not corpses. Marcus grunted in disgust. Slaves. They think they're going to make us slaves. They think a lot of things, Catherine said. Most of them wrong. What's the status of our actual defenses? Samuel stepped forward to take over the briefing. All 3,000 combat vessels are in position throughout the Sol system. The orbital platforms are powered down but ready. The moon bases are sealed and invisible to their sensors. And the special projects are online and waiting. Catherine nodded with satisfaction. The plan was working perfectly. For decades, humanity had hidden its true military capabilities from the galaxy. They had built a modest official fleet that the Council could see and measure. They had developed technologies that seemed primitive by galactic standards. They had played the role of a young, weak species struggling to find its place among the stars. All of it was a lie. The truth was that humanity had been preparing for this moment. Since first contact, they had studied the Council, learned its tactics, analyzed its weaknesses. They had built weapons in secret, developed strategies that the galaxy had never seen, trained soldiers who understood that defeat was not an option, and now the trap was set. High Arbiter Zelthan has been sending daily messages demanding our surrender, Lisa said, each one more arrogant than the last. He believes we are cowering in fear. Let him believe it, Catherine replied. The longer he underestimates us, the better. When does his fleet reach Sol? 3 days at their current speed? They're taking their time, securing each system before moving on. They want to make sure we have no escape route. Catherine smiled. Good. Make sure our remaining outer colonies continue to offer no resistance. I want the Council completely confident when they arrive here. I want them certain of victory. On the colony world of Kepler-4, for to be. A woman named Patricia Hayes stood in the central square of her town and watched Council soldiers patrol the streets. They were Voreth's Kathrani, massive armored beings who moved with the confidence of conquerors. They had landed 3 hours ago and immediately begun establishing control. One of them approached her, his 4 eyes studying her with curiosity. You do not seem afraid, human. Patricia met his gaze steadily. Should I be? Your world has been conquered. Your species is being subjugated. Yes, you should be afraid. Patricia smiled, and something in that smile made the Kathrani's armor plates shift uncomfortably. My grandmother fought in 3 wars, she said. My mother served for 30 years in the Defense Force. My brother is a captain on one of our warships. Fear is not something my family understands very well. Then you are fools, the soldier said. The Council fleet is unstoppable. Your military has fled. You have no hope of victory, if you say so. The Kathrani stared at her for a long moment, then moved on. He reported the encounter to his superiors, who dismissed it as bravado from a primitive species unable to accept reality. They were wrong. Across all 16 conquered colonies, similar scenes played out. Humans watched their conquerors with calm expressions and mysterious smiles. They answered questions politely, but revealed nothing useful. They went about their daily lives as if nothing had changed, and in secret communications that the Council could not detect. They sent messages back to Earth, messages containing troop numbers, equipment inventories, patrol schedules, command structures, everything that human intelligence needed to know about the enemy forces. The humans on those colonies were not defeated populations. They were spies. Every single one of them. Fleet Commander Voreth received the report from his intelligence officer with growing unease. They have gathered no resistance forces. They have made no attempts at sabotage. They have not even protested our occupation. Is this not good news, Commander? No, Voreth said slowly. This is very bad news. A species that does not resist is either broken or planning something. The humans are not broken. I have seen their history. They have survived catastrophes that would have ended most civilizations. They do not break. He turned to face his second-in-command. Send a message to High Arbiter Zelthan. Tell him I have concerns about this campaign. Tell him something is wrong. The message was sent. Zelthan received it, read it, and dismissed it. Voroth was being paranoid. The humans had recognized superior force and chosen survival over pointless resistance. It was the logical response. The fleet continued its advance toward. Sol Catherine Cole received the intelligence reports from her colonies and allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. Everything was going according to plan. The enemy was confident. The enemy was careless. The enemy had no idea what was waiting for them. 3 more days, she said softly. 3 more days, and then we show them what humanity really is. It's in orbit around Earth, hidden among the debris of old satellites and space stations. 3,000 warships waited in silence. Their crews were ready. Their weapons were charged. Their commanders had trained for years for this moment. The trap was set. The prey was approaching, and humanity was ready. The Council fleet entered the Sol system on a bright Tuesday morning Earth time. 400,000 ships arranged in a formation that stretched across millions of kilometers of space. Their weapons powered and ready, their crews confident of easy victory. They had conquered 16 human worlds without firing a single shot. This final battle would be no different. High Arbiter Zelthan watched from his command throne aboard the flagship. Divine justice. Through the massive viewscreen, he could see Earth, small blue and green sphere that held the entire human population that mattered. Once this world fell, the humans would be finished. They would become another client species of the Council, their resources and labor serving the greater civilizations of the galaxy. Status report, he demanded. We are detecting minimal defenses. High Arbiter, his sensor officer reported. Approximately 200 small warships in orbit around the third planet, several orbital platforms, but they appear to be lightly armed. Nothing that poses a threat to our fleet. Zelthan's scales shifted to a color indicating satisfaction. Just as he had expected. The humans had nothing left to fight with. Their withdrawal from their outer colonies had not been a strategy. It had been an admission of defeat. Open a channel to their command, he ordered. I will offer them one final chance to surrender with dignity. The face of Admiral Catherine Cole appeared on his screen. She looked calm, almost relaxed. Behind her, Zelthan could see the interior of what appeared to be a command center, with officers moving efficiently at their stations. High Arbiter, Catherine said. I was wondering when you would call, Admiral Cole. Your defenses are laughable. Your fleet is insignificant. Your species has no hope of surviving this battle. Surrender now, and I will spare your population. Resist, and I will turn your world to ash. Catherine nodded slowly as if considering his words. Then she turned to someone off-screen. Marcus, what do you think? Should we surrender? A deep voice answered. I don't know, Catherine. The kids have been looking forward to testing the new toys. It would be a shame to disappoint them. Zelthan's scales flickered with confusion. Toys? What was this human talking about? Catherine turned back to the screen. I'm sorry, High Arbiter. I'm afraid we're going to have to decline your generous offer. But I do have a question for you. What question? Do you remember what I asked you when you first declared war on us? Zelthan's memory was perfect. He remembered every word. You asked if this was all we had. That's right. And now, I'm going to show you what we have. The channel went dead. For a moment, nothing happened. The Council fleet continued its advance. Sensor officers reported no change in the human defenses. Several commanders began to laugh at the humans' empty bravado. Then space itself seemed to change. All around the Council fleet, weapons platforms that had been invisible moments before powered up and revealed themselves. They were hidden in asteroid fields, buried in the surfaces of moons, disguised as space debris. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. Each one carrying weapons that the Council had never seen before. "What is happening?" Zelthan demanded, his scales shifting rapidly through colors of alarm. Before anyone could answer, the human fleet attacked. The 200 ships that the Council had detected were just the visible portion of humanity's navy. Now, the rest emerged from hiding. 3,000 warships rose from concealment, their weapons already firing. They moved with a speed and coordination that should have been impossible. Each ship knowing exactly where to be and what to do, and the weapons they carried were unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Railguns fired metal slugs at fractions of the speed of light. They punched through Council shields as if they did not exist, tearing through armor and hull alike. Energy weapons of frequencies that Council scientists had theorized but believed impossible. Cut through formations of ships, destroying dozens with each shot, but the most terrifying weapons were the ones that bent. Gravity itself. Fleet Commander Vorath watched in horror as a directed gravity pulse struck the ship next to his flagship. The vessel, a mighty battle cruiser that had conquered a dozen worlds, simply crumpled. It was as if an invisible hand had grabbed it and squeezed. In seconds, a ship that had measured 2 kilometers in length became a ball of twisted metal no larger than a ground vehicle. "Retreat," Vorath ordered, his voice breaking with fear. "All ships, retreat immediately." But retreat was not possible. The human fleet had positioned itself perfectly, cutting off every escape route. The hidden weapons platforms continued their deadly fire, creating killing zones that claimed hundreds of ships every minute. And somewhere, commanding it all, Admiral Catherine Cole watched her plan unfold exactly as she had designed it. Captain Samuel Green stood on the bridge of the Defiance, coordinating the attack. "All squadrons report full engagement," he announced. "Enemy fleet is attempting to scatter. Interceptor groups are in pursuit." "Don't let any of them escape," Catherine ordered from her command center on Earth. "Every ship that gets away will carry warnings back to the Council. I want this to be a complete surprise when we bring the war to them." "Understood, Admiral." The battle lasted for hours. It was not really a battle at all. It was a massacre. The Council had expected to face a primitive species with inferior technology and no military experience. Instead, they faced the descendants of warriors who had spent 10,000 years learning how to kill. They faced weapons developed by scientists who understood that war was humanity's oldest tradition. They faced soldiers who had been told that defeat meant the end of their species, and who had decided that was not going to happen. Of the 400,000 ships that entered the Sol system, fewer than 30,000 managed to escape. The rest were destroyed, captured, or disabled beyond repair. Council casualties numbered in the tens of millions. Human casualties were less than 2,000. High Arbiter Zelthan was among the survivors who fled. His flagship had been damaged but remained functional, and he had ordered a retreat when it became clear that the battle was lost. Now, as his ship limped toward the safety of Council space, he stared at the tactical recordings of the battle and tried to understand what had happened. "This is impossible," he muttered. "They were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to be weak. How do they possess weapons that surpass our most advanced technology?" His science officer had no answer. The weapons the humans had used were based on principles that Council scientists had considered theoretical at best. The humans had not only proven those principles possible, but had turned them into practical military applications. "We need to warn the Council," Zelthan said. "We need to gather a larger fleet. 10 times this size. 100 times. We need to destroy them before they become an even greater threat." But even as he spoke, Zelthan knew the truth. The Council had gathered its greatest military force to crush the humans. It had failed utterly. There was nothing left to gather. The Council's military power had been shattered in a single afternoon, and somewhere behind him, the human fleet was already preparing to follow. Admiral Catherine Cole surveyed the aftermath of the battle and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The first phase was complete. Humanity had survived the initial assault and destroyed the enemy fleet. Now came the harder part. "Send a message to all fleet commanders," she ordered. "Phase 2 begins immediately. We are taking this war to the Council." The message went out. Across the Sol system, ships that had just fought the greatest battle in human history began preparing for the next mission. They were tired. They were battered. But they were not finished. Humanity was just getting started. The news of the Council. Fleet's destruction spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. Species that had been conquered centuries ago heard the whispers and dared to hope. Species that had ruled for millennia heard the reports and felt fear for the first time in their existence. And in the halls of power, on Nexus Prime, the representatives of 47 civilizations gathered in shock and disbelief. "This cannot be accurate," declared Ambassador Krelthan of the Voroth Imperium. His species had contributed the largest portion of the defeated fleet. 400,000 ships, destroyed by primitives. Our sensors must have malfunctioned. Our commanders must have made errors. "The data does not lie," said High Arbiter Zelthan, his scales pale and his voice tired. He had arrived at Nexus Prime just hours ago, his damaged flagship barely able to complete the journey. I witnessed it myself. The humans possess weapons beyond our understanding. They possess tactics we have never encountered. They possess a will to fight that defies all logic. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted accusations at each other. Military leaders demanded explanations. Scientists insisted that the reported weapons were impossible. Admiral Catherine Cole chose that moment to interrupt. Her face appeared on every screen in the chamber, cutting through the chaos with the calm authority that had become her signature. Behind her, the human fleet was visible through a viewport. Hundreds of ships moving in perfect formation toward their next target. "Good evening, Council," she said. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important."
"Oh, yes."
Zelthan rose from his seat, his scales shifting through colors that indicated fury and desperation. "Admiral Cole, you have made a terrible mistake. The Council will not forget this defeat. We will rebuild. We will return with forces you cannot imagine. You will do nothing," Catherine interrupted. "Your fleet is destroyed. Your military is shattered. Your member species are already questioning whether the Council can protect them. You have nothing left to threaten us with. Then why are you calling? To mock us? No. I'm calling to explain something. To help you understand what just happened and what is about to happen next." She touched a control, and images appeared on the Council's screens. Images of Earth's history. Armies marching across ancient battlefields. Ships of wood and steel clashing on dark oceans. Aircraft filling skies turned red with fire. Mushroom clouds rising over devastated cities. "You studied our species," Catherine said. "You counted our ships. You measured our territory. You analyzed our technology. But you never studied our history. You never understood what made us who we are." The images continued. Wars spanning continents. Sieges lasting years. Weapons evolving generation after generation, each more destructive than the last. "We have been fighting each other since before we could write," Catherine continued. "Every generation invented new ways to kill. Every war taught us new lessons. When two human nations fought, the winner was the one that adapted fastest, that developed better tactics, that built superior weapons. The losers died. Evolution through warfare. 10,000 years of it." Ambassador Krelthan found his voice. "Many species have violent histories. It does not explain your technology, as it does. Every weapon your fleet encountered today was built on knowledge we gained from fighting each other. Our railguns are descendants of weapons we used in wars centuries ago. Our gravity manipulation came from scientists trying to build better bombs. Our tactics were developed by officers who spent their entire careers preparing for conflicts with other human nations." Catherine paused. "When we reached the stars and discovered we weren't alone, we didn't stop preparing. We just got a new enemy to prepare for." The council chamber was silent. Representatives who had ruled the galaxy for millennia, stared at this human woman who spoke to them without a trace of fear or respect. "You declared war on 40 billion humans," Catherine said. 40 billion descendants of warriors who have spent their entire existence learning how to destroy anyone who threatens them. And you thought 400,000 ships would be enough." She shook her head slowly. "You had no idea what you were dealing with." Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of her destroyer, the Swift Justice, watching the tactical display as her squadron pursued fleeing council vessels through the Kepler. Gapper ship was one of 50 tasked with hunting down survivors before they could escape to warn other council installations. "Contact bearing 274, reported Lieutenant Kevin Walsh from the sensor station. 3 vessels, badly damaged. They're trying to reach the neutral zone." Maria studied the display with cold calculation. The neutral zone was a region of SPAC claimed by species that had refused to join the Council. If the Council ships reached it, they would be safe from pursuit. Maria's orders were to prevent that. "All ships, intercept course," she ordered. "Weapons free on my command." The Swift Justice and her sister ships accelerated toward the fleeing enemies. They closed the distance in minutes, their advanced engines giving them speed that the damaged Council vessels could not match. The lead Council ship sent a desperate transmission. "Human vessels, we surrender. We request mercy under the rules of galactic warfare." Maria considered the request. Under normal circumstances, she might have accepted the surrender. Prisoners could provide valuable intelligence. But these were not normal circumstances. The Council had declared war on humanity with the intention of enslaving every human in existence. They had shown no mercy in their plans. "Your Council voted to destroy my species," Maria said calmly. "Your fleet came to our home to kill our families and enslave our children. And now you ask for mercy, please. We were only following orders. So are we." Maria turned to her weapons officer. "Fire." The 3 Council ships exploded in quick succession. Maria felt nothing. This was war, and in war, sentiment was a luxury she could not afford. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Human hunter squadrons pursued Council survivors relentlessly. They destroyed ships that tried to flee and captured installations that surrendered. Within weeks, human forces had pushed deep into Council territory, liberating colonies and space stations that had been under Council control for centuries. Admiral Catherine Cole coordinated the campaign from her headquarters on Earth. She had not slept more than a few hours since the battle began, but she showed no signs of fatigue. There would be time to rest when the war was over. Admiral said. Director Lisa Morgan, entering the command center with a datapad in her hand. "We've received communications from 17 species that were previously members of the Council. They want to negotiate independence." Catherine nodded. "I expected this. Council's power was based on the belief that resistance was impossible. We've proven that belief wrong. Now everyone who ever resented Council rule is going to want out. Do we accept their requests?" "We do more than accept them. We offer alliance, military protection, in exchange for economic partnership. We're going to build something new, Lisa. Something better than the Council ever was." On Nexus Prime, High Arbiter Zelthan watched as his empire crumbled. Species that had been loyal Council members for centuries were declaring independence. Military forces that should have been defending Council space were surrendering to human squadrons without a fight. The 47 civilizations that had united to rule the galaxy were breaking apart. How? He asked the empty chamber. How did this happen? They were supposed to be insignificant. They were supposed to be easily conquered. How did they become the greatest military power in the galaxy? There was no answer. But Zelthan knew the truth, even if he could not accept it. The Council had looked at humanity and seen a young species. They had seen primitive technology. They had seen a small territorial footprint. They had assumed that youth meant weakness, that a short history among the stars meant inexperience in warfare. They had been catastrophically wrong. Humanity's short history among the stars meant nothing. Their history on Earth meant everything. They were the products of 10,000 years of conflict, shaped by endless warfare into the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever seen. And now that species was coming for the Council. 1 year after the Council declared war on humanity, High Arbiter Zelthan walked through the corridors of the United Nations building in Geneva. His scales were pale, his movements slow, his 6 eyes fixed on the floor in front of him. Armed human soldiers escorted him, though they were not really necessary. Zelthan had no intention of resisting. He had come to accept the inevitable. The great assembly hall was filled with representatives from across the galaxy. Humans occupied the central positions, of course. This was their world, their victory, their moment. But they had invited others to witness, species that had declared independence from the Council, species that had allied with humanity during the war, even species that had remained neutral, curious to see how the new order would be established. Admiral Catherine Cole stood at the podium, looking out over the assembled beings. She had aged in the past year. The stress of commanding a galactic war had taken its toll. But her eyes were sharp, and her voice was strong. 1 year ago, she began, the Galactic Council declared war on humanity. They believed we were weak. They believed we were primitive. They believed we would submit without a fight. A murmur passed through the crowd. Everyone knew this history. They had lived through it. They were wrong. We did not submit. We fought back. And we won. The murmur became applause from the human observers and their allies. Representatives of former Council species sat in uncomfortable silence. But victory in war is not enough, Catherine continued. War destroys, does not build. The Council ruled this galaxy through fear and force for thousands of years. We will not repeat their mistakes. We will not become the tyrants we fought against. She gestured to the delegation of former Council species. The beings who sit before you were our enemies. Their governments declared war on us. Their fleets tried to destroy us. Some of them personally ordered attacks that killed thousands of our people. The human observers shifted angrily. Many of them had lost friends and family in the war. Forgiveness did not come easily. But they are not evil. They are beings who followed their leaders, just as we follow ours. They made decisions based on what they believed was true about us. Those beliefs were wrong, but the beings who held them were not monsters. They were simply mistaken. Catherine turned to face Zelthan directly. High Arbiter, you led the Council that declared war on humanity. You commanded the forces that intended to enslave our species. In the eyes of human law, you are a war criminal. By any measure of justice, you deserve punishment. Zelthan's scales flickered weakly. He had expected this. He had prepared himself for execution, imprisonment, or public humiliation. What he had not prepared for was what came next. But punishment serves no purpose here, Catherine said. Killing you will not bring back the dead. Imprisoning you will not heal the wounds. The only thing that can help us move forward is building something better than what came before. She held out her hand to him. The Galactic Council is dissolved. In its place, we are establishing the Terran Alliance, an organization built on mutual defense, free trade, and respect for the sovereignty of all species. Any civilization that wishes to join will be welcome. Any civilization that wishes to remain independent will be left in peace. Zelthan stared at her hand for a long moment. His species did not shake hands. The gesture meant nothing to him physically, but he understood its meaning. She was offering him a chance to be part of what came next, rather than a relic of what had failed. Slowly, he reached out with one of his 4 hands and accepted her grip. The chamber erupted in applause, this time from all observers. It was a symbol of what the new order could be. Former enemies becoming partners, hatred giving way to hope. Over the next several months, the Terran Alliance took shape. Humanity shared technology with species that joined. Carefully selected to improve lives without creating new weapons of mass destruction, trade routes were established, bringing prosperity to worlds that had been isolated for centuries. Disputes were resolved through negotiation rather than force. Admiral Catherine Cole retired from active duty 2 years after the war ended. She had done what she had set out to do. She had protected humanity. She had defeated its enemies. She had built a foundation for lasting peace. On her final day in uniform, she stood in the courtyard of the Galactic Military Academy. a new institution established on Earth to train officers from all allied species. Students in the uniforms of a dozen civilizations stood at attention, waiting to hear from the woman who had led humanity through its greatest challenge. You come from different worlds, Catherine told them, different species, different histories, but you are united by one thing, a commitment to defend the innocent and preserve the peace. That is what soldiers do. Not conquer, not destroy, defend and preserve. She paused, looking at the young faces before her. Human and Kathrani, Veltari and Teflon. Species that had been enemies a generation ago, now training side by side. The galaxy thought humanity was weak because we were young. They underestimated us because they did not understand our history. But our history is not just a story of war, it is also a story of overcoming division, of former enemies becoming friends, choosing cooperation over conflict. A young Voreth cadet raised his hand. Catherine nodded for him to speak. Admiral, if I may ask, how did your species develop such fearsome military capabilities? Our records show that you spent most of your history fighting among yourselves. Catherine smiled. It was a question she had been asked many times. That's exactly why, cadet. We spent our entire existence fighting ourselves. Every generation learned from the previous one. Every war taught us something new. We got very good at it. The galaxy just never thought to ask what would happen when we all decided to fight together. The cadet nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his compound eyes. Then perhaps the council was fortunate that your species chose mercy and victory. Perhaps. Or perhaps we simply got tired of death and decided to build something better. Catherine looked out at the stars visible in the afternoon sky. The truth is, we never wanted this war. We wanted to explore, to learn, to grow. The council forced us to fight. Now that the fighting is over, we can finally do what we always wanted. And what is that, Admiral? Catherine's smile widened. Everything. The galaxy is vast. There are wonders we haven't seen, mysteries we haven't solved, friends we haven't made yet. That's what I want humanity's legacy to be. Not conquest, but curiosity. Not domination, but discovery. She stepped down from the podium and walked through the ranks of cadets, human and alien alike. They represented the future she had fought for. A future where species worked together instead of against each other. A future where strength was used to protect, not to conquer. Behind her, the flag of the Terran Alliance flew in the wind. It showed a blue circle representing Earth, surrounded by 47 stars representing the species that had joined the Alliance. More stars would be added as more species joined. The circle would grow, the Alliance would strengthen, and somewhere in the cosmos, other species were watching. Species that had not yet made contact with the Alliance. Species that were observing these events and making their own judgments about humanity. What they saw was a species that had faced annihilation and emerged victorious. A species that had been given the chance to dominate the galaxy and had chosen partnership instead. A species that was young among the stars but ancient in the ways of survival. And what they understood eventually was the lesson that the Council had learned too late. Never underestimate humanity. Never threaten what they love. Never give them a reason to show what they are truly capable of. Because humanity had spent 10,000 years learning how to destroy. And now they were spending their future learning how to build. The galaxy would never be the same.